You know what I mean when I say the godfather, right? Well, get ready to hear about the godmother of cocaine. She is Griselda Blanco.
Arrested in Mexico City in 2007, she was held for 5 years in a Mexican federal prison before being extradited last year to the United States.
The drug trade has long been associated with violence, corruption, and organized crime. It's a shadowy industry that operates behind closed doors and often at the expense of innocent lives. While men have traditionally dominated the drug trade, numerous women have also played significant roles in this illicit industry. Some women have gained notoriety for their ruthless tactics and violent activities as narcos. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the lives of the most dangerous female narcos in history. These women gained notoriety for their involvement in the drug trade and their violent activities, and their stories provide a window into the often hidden world of organized crime. We will investigate their backgrounds, rise to power, alleged criminal activities, and eventual arrest and sentencing. Number 4. La Flacas. La Flaca is a term used to refer to female sicarias in the cartel world who are deadly adversaries to their male counterparts. They possess a unique combination of physical beauty, cunning intelligence, and a willingness to use violence to achieve their goals. These women are often underestimated by their enemies, who mistakenly assume their gender makes them weak and vulnerable. However, they are more than capable of holding their own in the male-dominated world of organized crime. La Flacas can blend in and go unnoticed, using their feminine charms to get close to their targets before striking. They are not content to be the wives or girlfriends of cartel bosses. They want to be in charge and have a say in operation. Veronica Maria Moreno. Carreon, interestingly, the original La Flacas were 3 women who rose to power in the Mexican drug trade during the 1990s. The first was Veronica Maria Moreno Carreon, who paved the way for future generations of female sicarias, proving that even in the world of crime, women can be just as deadly. Veronica Maria Moreno Carreon had an unorthodox career path, starting as a police officer, but later throwing herself into the dangerous world of Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most notorious drug cartels. Her willingness to take risks and unwavering loyalty earned her a prominent position within the organization. Carreon eventually took over the cartel after the capture of Raul Garcia Rodriguez, becoming the first woman known to head a major cartel. She was selected mainly for her cruelty, as her duty was to organize and carry out executions, torture, extortion, kidnapping, and to make drug transfers, among other functions. However, her reign was not without controversy, and in 2011 she was arrested and charged with murder and drug deals. Nancy Manriquez Quintanar. The second original Flaca, known by the alias Nancy Manriquez Quintanar, met a similar fate as her predecessor when authorities captured her in 2011. As a member of Los Zetas, she had a reputation as a ruthless criminal, believed to be responsible for the deaths of at least 9 rival cartel members. Jocelyn Nino. Despite these La Flaca's reputation and undeniable talent, they are not invincible. Betrayal from within their ranks is a constant fear, as is the risk of being captured by the authorities and facing severe consequences for their actions. But perhaps the greatest danger comes from their bitter rivals, other ruthless cartels who see the La Flacas as a direct threat to their power. It's dangerous, and most Las Flacas, like Jocelyn Nino, don't last long. Jocelyn Nino, a notorious assassin for the Gulf Cartel, gained instant fame when she posted a photo on social media of herself grinning while clutching a modified weapon. The image quickly went viral, turning her into an overnight sensation. However, her social media activity proved her downfall, and La Gladys, another skinny girl from the Zetas, brutally murdered her. In 2015, Nino was discovered in an ice cooler on the US-Mexico border alongside a man and a woman. A photo showing a tattoo on her right forearm that read Nino was shared on Twitter with the message, "It will happen to all the filthy who want to support cyclones." The Gulf Cartel faction Los Ciclones was Nino's employer. Nino's death was a result of her gloating over her achievements. As writer and expert on Mexican cartels, Andrew Chestnut notes, "These girls know that they have to keep a low profile for their work, but for many, the temptation to post on Instagram and Twitter is too great, and they end up making themselves targets. The tragic fate of Jocelyn Nino serves as a stark reminder that in the world of organized crime, even the slightest mistake can have deadly consequences. La Pec. Amidst the gruesome world of Mexico's drug cartels, a female sicaria named La Pec, or the Little One, shocked and disgusted people with her chilling confessions. La Pec was born in Hidalgo, near Mexico City. At 15, she became pregnant by a man 20 years her senior and worked as a sex worker to support herself and her child before venturing into the dangerous world of cartels. Juana, as she is also known, started as a halconeo, a lookout for police and army patrols. Her job required her to stand at a lookout point for 8 hours at a time, and if she failed, she claimed to have been tied up and given only a single taco per day. Eventually, Juana was captured by authorities for her brutal crimes with the Sinaloa cartel, and she brazenly confessed to taking the lives of at least 5 men. But she revealed an even more disturbing twist. Not only did she enjoy drinking the blood of her victims, but she also shockingly admitted to engaging in sexual acts with them after committing the heinous crimes. These revelations highlight the depths of depravity to which female assassins will pursue power and infamy. La Malanda. Amongst these women, one stands out as a ruthless operator, La Malandra, or the Thuguet, who posts pictures of herself online, flaunting her position as an agent of the brutal Zeta cartel. Despite a 9-year career in the industry, she remains at large, moving through the country undetected, disguised as an ordinary young Mexican. The authorities may be closing in, but La Malandra remains one of the Mexican underworld's most notorious and elusive figures. Number 3. Thelma Wright, early life. Thelma Wright's tale is a rare gem in cartels, where women are often dragged into the crime world due to their tumultuous upbringing. But her difference is also what makes her a formidable figure. She didn't succumb to a life of crime out of necessity. Instead, she joined the game. Wright grew up in a loving Catholic household in South Philadelphia, attending St. Maria Goretti High School, and later pursuing real estate management at Temple University. Her entrepreneurial spirit led her to establish a clothing design company, Jackiem Enterprises, Inc., in Los Angeles during the late 1980s. Despite her success in LA, Wright eventually returned to her roots in Philly, where she longed for the comfort of home. Her life details a unique journey, from the halls of higher education to the streets of the drug trade. In the late 1970s, Thelma Wright crossed paths with Jackie Wright, a notorious figure in the Philadelphia drug scene with ties to the ruthless Black Mafia. Despite their differences, the two fell in love and started a family, with Thelma giving birth to their son Jackiem in 1982. However, their happiness was short-lived as tragedy struck when Jackie's life was taken in 1986. Left with a difficult decision, Thelma could either turn away from the criminal underworld or take over her late husband's drug empire. Thelma chose the latter. Rise to power. Philadelphia in the early 90s was a mecca of drug distribution, primarily smack and coke. Thelma Wright, having gotten a taste of the good life and the promise of quick cash, stepped up to the plate and took over her husband's trade with the skill of a seasoned pro. She built a formidable organization nationwide, masterminding the transportation of large quantities of cocaine and heroin between Los Angeles and Philadelphia. As her empire grew, so did her reputation, earning her such illustrious titles as Boss Lady and Queen Pen. For Wright, it was not about survival, but getting to another level. Thelma Wright's rise in the drug trade brought her a lavish lifestyle with riches beyond her wildest dreams. The piles of cash she accumulated were so immense that she felt like a character straight out of The Godfather. And she wasn't kidding. Wright's drug empire was raking in profits by approximately $400,000 per month alone. However, the thrill of the game came at a steep cost. The danger, the paranoia, and the constant risk of getting caught were all taking their toll on Wright. The price of power was steep, but for Thelma, the rewards were worth it, or so she thought. Leaving the drug trade in July 1991, Wright and several of her friends were caught in the crossfire of a gangland shootout at a famous late-night club called Studio West. It was a miracle that they managed to escape with their lives. But fate wasn't done playing its cards with Wright. Just days later, she narrowly missed being caught in the crosshairs of the law. One of her longtime clients, Fats, was arrested for attempting to track down a missing package, which had caught the attention of the police. By the end of 1991, Thelma Wright had decided to leave the drug game for good. She chose to retreat from the public eye, keeping her past secret. She lived a quiet life for many years, trying to make amends for her past deeds. In 2009, Wright began working for a non-profit organization that helped women who were struggling with addiction and mental health issues. Her experience in the drug game had given her the tools she needed to manage properties and make a difference in these women's lives. It was a chance to atone for her past and positively impact society. In 2011, Wright decided to come clean about her past and published a memoir titled With Eyes from Both Sides, Living My Life in and Out of the Game. She spoke candidly about her time in the drug game, the risks she had taken, and the regret she felt. Looking back, Thelma Wright was clear about one thing. She had done what she had to do to provide for her son, but if given a choice, she would never go down that path again. Number 2. Sandra Avila Beltran, Early Life. In the year 1960, in the sun-drenched state of Baja California, a future cartel queen was born to a mother named Maria Luisa Beltran Felix and a father named Alfonso Avila Quintero. Born into a life of luxury, Sandra Avila Beltran's father had close ties to the Guadalajara cartel, showering his daughter with unimaginable wealth. In her youth, piles of cash surrounded her at all times, with the young Beltran often passing her time counting the bills. Such was her preoccupation with her family's wealth that, as an adult, she could instantly determine the value of a stack of money merely by holding it. Sandra Avila Beltran was raised amid the narco lifestyle, surrounded by the glitz and glamour of the drug trade. But she also witnessed its darker side from a young age. Her innocence shattered at age 13 when she saw her first shootout. Despite this, she initially had no desire to follow in her family's criminal footsteps, instead pursuing a career in communications at the Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara, rise to power. However, fate had other plans for her. A jealous boyfriend with his ties to the cartels abducted her when she was just 21 years old, casting her into a nightmare world that would forever alter her life's path. The details of her kidnapping remain murky, but its impact was clear. The experience opened her eyes to the true extent of the cartel's power, and she soon left behind her studies to enter the drug trade herself. Sandra's ascent was swift and ruthless, ascending the ranks to become one of the most influential figures in the Mexican underworld. Perhaps her traumatic kidnapping taught her that power and violence were the only currencies that truly mattered in the drug trade, and so she embraced her new life with all the tenacity and cunning that would soon make her a legend in her own right. The world of drug trafficking in Mexico is a man's world, dominated by ruthless kingpins and their armies of henchmen. Women are rarely seen in positions of power, relegated instead to serve roles as the cartel boss's playthings. The top cartel leaders kept harems of women, using and disposing of them as they pleased. However, Sandra Avila Beltran refused to be a mere decoration in this twisted game. Despite the challenges she faced as a woman, she had an unrelenting determination to climb to the top of the hierarchy. But Beltran didn't rely on brute force alone to establish her reputation. Instead, she used her wits and cunning to outsmart her rivals at every turn. She never touched the drugs she peddled, knowing that her enemies would exploit any sign of weakness. Instead, she relied on her good looks and charm to win over the powerful men she dealt with. As she rose through the cartel ranks, Beltran became a powerhouse. She was fearless, relentless, and utterly determined to succeed, and her efforts paid off. Soon, she became a legend in the Mexican drug world, earning the nickname the Queen of the Pacific. Her skills as a key link between cartel leaders in Colombia and Mexico allowed her to organize shipments of tons of the white substance hidden in tuna boats from Mexico to the United States for years without ever leaving a trace that authorities could use against her. This made her billions of dollars. Arrest Sandra Avila Beltran lived a life of wealth, power, and glamour in the drug world, but violence and danger were always lurking. Her husband's brother and son were all victims of violence, and she narrowly escaped assassination. After paying a ransom for her son's kidnapping, Beltran went on the run, evading the authorities for half a decade before being caught and charged with money laundering. For Beltran, the arrest was a bittersweet relief. Even if it meant facing the harsh reality of her crimes, it ended the exhausting effort of hiding in plain sight, constantly avoiding detection. The Mexican government couldn't pin any drug charges on Beltran, so she was charged with money laundering, and soon convicted. However, her time in prison was hardly comparable to that of the average inmate, as her wealth and power allowed her to navigate the corrupt system easily. Visitors were allowed. She received them adorned in high-end fashion and jewelry while her staff served food and drinks. In 2015, after serving only 7 years, she was released. Number 1. Griselda Blanco. Early life. Griselda Blanco's reputation as a fierce enforcer and her ability to smuggle illegal substances across borders made her a valuable asset to the cartel. However, her criminal activities didn't start with the drug trade. Born in 1943, Blanco and her mother, a sex worker, moved to Medellin, Colombia when she was just 3 years old. She suffered abuse and violence at the hands of her mother's clients, forcing her to flee and never look back. Medellin was known as the epicenter of the cocaine trade, and Blanco found herself surrounded by low-level criminals with whom she became friendly. She started with petty crimes such as looting and smuggling perfumes from Venezuela. Blanco's petty crimes turned dark at just 11 years old when she participated in the kidnapping of a 10-year-old boy. When the boy's parents refused to pay the ransom, she took his life. Years later, Blanco married Carlos Trujillo, a forger of immigration papers, and they had 3 sons. However, their marriage fell apart, with Blanco being suspected of having Trujillo murdered in 1970. Rise to power. Her rise to power began in the early 1970s when she and her husband, Albert Bravo, began smuggling white powder into the United States from Colombia. Blanco knew that to succeed, she needed to innovate and stay ahead of the competition. So she became the first to use multiple sources of supply and pioneered the idea of pooling trafficker resources and sharing the risks. With these strategies, she revolutionized the drug trade and made unimaginable profits. Blanco's keen business sense quickly made her a valuable asset to the cartel's operations, and she helped push Colombian narcotics into major cities like New York, Miami, and Southern California. But her most innovative contribution was her invention of special undergarments that enabled her to smuggle large quantities across the border undetected. With this tool at her disposal, Blanco and the cartel could avoid detection by law enforcement. As Blanco's power grew, so did her reputation for violence and brutality. She was willing to do whatever it took to maintain control and eliminate her enemies, earning nicknames like the Godmother. And with the Medellin cartel backing her, Blanco became one of the most feared drug kingpins in history. In the mid-1970s, Blanco left Colombia for New York City, where she established a massive narcotics ring. Her reputation as one of the most ruthless drug kingpins in the world quickly followed, and her standing in the industry rose to a level that would match other infamous figures like Pablo Escobar. However, authorities were onto them, and 150 kilos of pure Colombian narcotics were seized during Operation Banshee. The couple was indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges, but was already on the run. Later that year, Blanco discovered that Bravo had stolen money from their illicit enterprise. She was furious, and there was only one way to deal with a traitor: take his life. After that, Blanco earned another nickname, the Black Widow. With Bravo out of the picture, Blanco completely controlled the drug trade. She returned to the U.S. in the late 1970s and set up shop in Miami, where she was about to alter the playing field. Blanco raked in about $80 million monthly, living a lavish lifestyle that included luxury cars, mansions, and a private jet. But as her wealth and influence grew, so did the violence associated with her reign. Murder became Blanco's favorite pastime, and her rule was marked by a level of brutality and cruelty that few had ever seen before. Under her leadership, the cocaine business in Miami-Dade County flourished like never before, and the drug was so prevalent that it was said you could find traces of cocaine on every dollar bill in the area. As the 80s wore on, her grip on the industry grew stronger. Violent tactics. Griselda Blanco was a strong contender in the male-dominated narco underworld of the 1970s and 80s. Standing 5 feet tall, she made up for her small stature with a cold, calculating viciousness that left her competitors trembling. As the bodies piled up on the streets of Miami, a period that came to be known as the Cocaine Cowboy Wars, Blanco surrounded herself with Los Pistoleros, her army of ruthless hitmen. Blanco was not one to check before she took a life. She simply ordered the hits and watched as her men carried them out. Blanco was also notorious for her brutal methods, including beheading and dumping victims on the side of the road. She was not one to be trifled with, and would silence those who owed her money or were a threat to her power. Officials believe she was responsible for at least 200 deaths in the United States and Colombia, but the actual number is likely much higher. Blanco even took her husband's life, Dario Sepulveda, after he fled the country with their child. Blanco's drug addiction eventually consumed her, amplifying her violent tendencies and paranoia. Other drug lords saw her as a threat and placed targets on her head, forcing her to flee to California to avoid her downfall. Her decision to leave behind the city she once ruled with an iron fist and the empire she had built was a desperate move driven by fear, capture, and demise. In 1985, DEA agents led by Robert Palumbo apprehended Griselda Blanco at her lavish home in California, ending her reign of terror. She faced numerous charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and ordering multiple murders. Blanco struck a plea deal with prosecutors and was only sentenced to 15 years in prison in exchange for pleading guilty to 3 murders and cooperating with law enforcement. She was released in 2004 and deported to Colombia to live in obscurity. However, in 2012, she was assassinated outside of a butcher shop by an unknown motorcyclist, sending shockwaves through the criminal underworld. Palumbo believes that Blanco's death was likely the result of her treachery. He theorizes that Blanco may have given up information to law enforcement in exchange for leniency for her son Michael, who was also involved in the drug trade. Such an act would have been a grave betrayal in the eyes of the cartel, and it's possible that they exacted revenge on Blanco for her perceived disloyalty. Blanco's final resting place is a mere 120 steps away from that of her former rival, Pablo Escobar, at Cementerio Jardines Montesacro in Colombia. The proximity of their graves is a reminder of the violence and corruption they both left behind. These women's lives were marked by violence, power, and tragedy. We hope this video has provided valuable insight into how their legacies remind us of the high price of ambition and the dangers of getting involved in the world of organized crime. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.